don't hesitate. We've all seen people that in our careers that plan and plan and plan and never pull a trigger. So, execute kind of said, ready, fire, aim, but there's a little bit of wisdom to that.
From cornfields to high-rises, office to industrial, houses to hotels, and every other asset class in real estate, we cover the people, the projects, and the profit. Welcome to the Investing in Iowa Show. This show is for go-doers, action takers, and business owners. It's for people like you who are sick of Uncle Sam taking a huge bite of your apple. If you're looking to get ahead of what's taking place in Iowa, learn who is doing what, and how you can get in on the action, you're in the right place. Hosted by Neil Timmins, an Iowa native who has been involved in over $300 million in real estate right here in Iowa. Recording in studio from West Des Moines. Here's your host, Neil Timmins.
I've got Kevin Crowley here on the show. Kevin, welcome.
Oh, thanks, Neil. Nice to be here.
I'm excited you're here. Say for the audience to say, who are you? Where are you from? What do you do?
Sure. I'm Kevin Crowley, and I'm actually from Boston, Massachusetts. I moved to Des Moines in 1977 for 6 months and never got the call to leave.
What do you do for a living?
Okay. I'm a commercial real estate broker. I've been in the commercial real estate business since about 1980. I manage Iowa Realty Commercial. And in my 40 plus years of doing this, I own my own company. I've owned a lot of real estate off and on and still do brokerage and enjoy myself.
Brought you here from Boston.
So I used to go around the country opening Rusty Scupper restaurants when I got out of college. And so the Rusty Scupper opened here. We opened it in July of 1977. I got out of college in May of 77. And I was living in Des Moines at the Howard Johnson's Hotel on Grand Avenue. We opened the Scupper right across the street. Then I left after 2 weeks of training new employees. And then in October of that year, I got a call saying, would you come back and help run the Des Moines Scupper because it was so busy? And they said, you'll be there for 6 months. I said, great. And I came back to Iowa, and I actually loved Iowa. It was an easy decision to come back here. And then I fell in love with Iowa and other things, and life happens. And so I've been here ever since. It's the best thing ever happened.
Yeah. How did you end up in the real estate business?
So the Rusty Scupper Corporation was owned by a group called Burrow Restaurants, which was two gentlemen in San Francisco by the name of Bill Wilson and Miller Ream. Miller happened to be originally from Sheridan, Iowa. So when I got moved here, Miller and I got to be friends. And so they were in the process of selling their Rusty Scupper restaurant chain to Stouffer's, and they had an earn-out that they wanted me to stay through that time. And then Miller hired me, and we built 1452 29th Street in West Des Moines, which is now owned by Lincoln Associates. But we built a 50,000-foot office building in 79-80. And in 1980, I leased 35,000 feet of that to Travelers Insurance. And that hit the beginning of my real estate career.
That was it.
Yeah, that was it.
Yeah. What stuck? I mean, you get in, you did that, but why that versus the restaurant?
Oh, restaurant businesses, I love restaurants, but it's a hard business. Yeah. It's a tough business. And literally, I actually did own some pizza places for a while in the 80s or 90s also. But the restaurant business is just a very difficult business. Yeah. It's fun, but the hours are crazy. It's a young person's game. Yeah. And so I was happy to get out of it and get into real estate.
Yeah. What did you learn from doing that first project?
The first project?
Yeah.
Well, Neil, I did not know a window mullion from a cinder block back when I started that project. And White's was our general contractor. Our architect was actually from the East Coast. I learned to read blueprints. I learned more about construction. I sat through every construction meeting, whether it was, general contractors, mechanical contractors, electrical contractors. So literally, I learned the nuts and bolts of building an office building back then in 79, 1980.
Yeah. Then you find your way into brokerage.
Right. So the natural extension was that the company I was working for wasn't going to do any more development in Iowa. And right around that time was when interest rates were crazy high. So they decided they weren't going to do any more development. So I actually went to work for Ken Granquist, who had owned the Coldwell Banker franchise at the time, maybe had an office in this very building. But I went to work for Kenny, and actually we were right on Hickman Avenue, right by 86th Street. In that building with the round windows. It's an insurance company now.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's where we officed, and I worked for Kenny for about 3.5 years, and he sold that company to Stanbro Realty and First Realty, and I worked for Gene Stanbro back then from about 83 to about 89. And then through the S&L crisis, that company was changing. And so I actually bought the assets of First Realty Commercial and started Crowley Mandelbaum in 89. John and I partnered through about 2000 before we separated. And John was focused 100% on development. I was still doing brokerage. And so I took the brokerage company. He took his development company. We split. Then fast forward to about 9/11. I was married. I had young kids, and I was worrying about payroll and other things. And so Iowa Realty had sold Iowa Realty Commercial, and he had no non-compete for 5 years. I ran into Mike Knapp one day, and he said, "We might be interested in buying your company." I said, "Let's go."
Yeah.
So anyway, it took a while, and actually we had to wait till the non-compete burned off.
Sure.
But they bought me in probably, I think it was July of 2002 or 3. And I literally thought I'd work for Iowa Realty for 3 or 4 years and probably go off and be more entrepreneurial and do other things. And here I am 22 years later, still there.
Ever
Yeah.
since.
Yeah, ever since.
You found a home.
I found a home. It's been good. Yeah.
Talk to me about the brokerage business. Unique. It's a unique business, especially on the commercial side, because the variance of the types of assets that one can touch, focus on.
Sure.
It's just so vast. Do you have an avenue which you like the most? Is there something you focused on, or you kind of run the gamut?
Yeah, I think in Iowa, just by the size of the market and the queue and things that go on in the market, you have to be have to have specialties, but be able to flex and go to something else. Very interesting. When I started my career in the 80s, tenant representation was a brand new thing. And I said, I took classes in Chicago. I learned everything I could about tenant representation and leasing, and literally became a tenant rep. And so when I'd be cold calling on people or seeing people in business, I would just say, I represent tenants, not landlords, and I'd love to have the opportunity to go to work for you. Well, it really took a year or two to really get going, but within 3 years, I had a very strong practice to a point where I was really a suburban leasing guy. And I got a call from one of the larger landlords downtown Des Moines. He says, "I have a problem with my building. Can you come down and talk to me?" So he hired me to list it and to lease it up. And we leased it up in about 18 months. And so that was the beginning of like diversifying my career. And so I became more of an office broker. Then I became more of an industrial broker. Over time, industrial real estate got hot and office may have been slow. And then, over time, whether it's investment real estate, I really, multifamily to me is a very specialized area. And I really respect we have some great multifamily brokers in Des Moines, but we've dabbled in that. And if I have a client that is a requirement, we'll do it. But I represent multiple families and family trusts that own a lot of real estate. And, I enjoy working with them and representing them.
Yeah, there's some asset classes that are just so very different. You
Right.
mentioned industrial and office. There's a lot of similarities, a lot of overlap.
Industrial is actually simpler to own
Yeah.
than office space. I had a client in the 80s, 90s, and really 2000s that all they did is they wanted to buy metal industrial buildings. And some people, would criticize that philosophy. And I want to tell you, they've been ultimately successful. And, actually, it's past a generation now, and they're still blowing the real estate, and it's still a great business for them.
Well, there's a lot of asset classes that can do extraordinarily well financially. So your return on investment is incredible, but your return on time is very low.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Your return on time in that metal building world is fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So it's been fun to watch some of that grow and participate in some of that too. Yeah.
Hey, Iowa investors, this is Ava Bautkamp, Chief of Staff at Legacy Impact Investors. Have you thought about adding real estate to your portfolio but don't have the time or desire to play landlord? At Legacy Impact Investors, we do the heavy lifting. Our team finds the deals, manages the properties, and handles all the day-to-day operations. Our select group of qualified investors co-invest with us, gaining ownership equity without opening a tenant email or responding to a maintenance call. They just share in the income, appreciation, and tax benefits. These opportunities aren't for everyone. They are for qualified, accredited investors only. If you want to learn more, please visit legacyimpactinvestors.com to apply.
What has shocked you most about the Des Moines and how it's changed from when you first started?
Well, when you really think about it, 40 years ago, the MSA was maybe 300,000, probably 285,000 people, I think is the number that sticks in my mind. And so now the fact that we're over, 750 heading to 800,000 people in the MSA, that's the amazing part, is the growth that we've seen in this market. And that actually, when I started doing leasing, the world stopped on 22nd Street and literally a Westtown Parkway being developed between 22nd and 35th and then 35th West. I can remember when Mark Pomerantz's key guys, gentleman by the name of Dave Hawkins, came to me and he said, they owned Regency West 1, 2, and 3, or Westridge 1, 2, and 3 at 28th and Westtown. And they said, we're gonna build this office park. We're gonna call it Regency. It's gonna be out on 50th and in Westtown Parkway. And they said, do you think it's too far west? And I said, no, people go out there. And at the time, 50th Street was a 2-lane road, and the bridge over the interstate was a 2-lane bridge. So literally, I said, no, Dave, this is great. And so literally, when they came out of the ground with that, we leased Meredith a big chunk of space. They had outgrown their stuff in downtown Des Moines, and we did a 5 or 10 year lease with Meredith out there, and did a number of leases at Regency. I can remember having the discussion, is that too far west? So, but literally in my tenant rep career, then I did a lot of work between, I watched, Dan Ruprecht start with one building on Grand Avenue, and then he started 3 Fountains. So, I watched all that develop, and, did a lot of leasing. Actually, when we started Crowley Mandelbaum, we were a tenant in 3 Fountains, and Tom Gaiman was our property manager.
Sure.
We had a great time.
Yeah. Tell me, what did you like? What asset class do you like most dealing with it, and why? I'm going to ask this question from both the brokerage standpoint and from the ownership standpoint, because I know you invest as well.
So right now, I probably, as an asset class, like industrial the most. Office space proves pretty cumbersome. As an owner of office space, you have to be careful when renewals are coming up, or if you get a vacancy, because it could be costly to rehab the space or convert it, do whatever. So I like industrial space. It's cleaner, simpler. It's a little bit more like retail, depending on the spaces you have. But so I like industrial as a class. And then frankly, what I have more of now than anything else is farmland. It's paid for. So anyway, yeah.
Tell me, let's talk a little about that. One of the a strategy for a number of people has been, especially as one gets older, I've got these appreciated assets.
Right.
Let me exchange out. Let me go to farm ground, because I don't have to do anything then. So my return on time is so great.
Yeah, we lease everything.
Yeah. And then, when it has to pass to the next generation, it's a lot easier.
It's all in trust.
Yeah.
That's right.
What drew you into farm ground?
Marriage.
Yeah.
No, it actually was, but we've been able to grow a little bit, and that's been fun. Yeah.
And you lease everything out.
Yep.
Yeah. It makes it for a simpler practice, doesn't it?
It really does.
Yeah.
It really does. We pay our taxes, and we meet with the farmer every March and renew the lease by August. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. No, that's great. What assets have you owned over the year? What classes? And then maybe tell me a story or two. What got you into it, and what got you out of it?
So for a while, I really liked retail. John Mandelbaum and I partnered, and I was a partner with John in the First Street or 63rd and Grand, where the hardware store and everything is in that park. And actually, I think Bill Wright just sold that for John's family and partners.
Yeah, you're talking right on the corner.
Yeah.
Dave's Hardware. And maybe there's a bar there.
The bar, the Sully's bar, and then there were some office buildings back there. And so that's changed over time. They did the Advanced Auto Parts deal. But I was in that partnership as I was going through a marital change in my life. That went away. And so, but that was a great property. Then I owned a couple of other shopping centers, and a couple of them were in rough areas. And I'll never forget, another prominent broker here in town sold one of my shopping centers. And that week there was somebody who was murdered in the shopping center. And I was so glad not to own it that week. And I feel terrible that happened. But so that was my retail career. Is really, I was up to about 3 or 4 shopping centers, got out of that. Then I had some partnerships in some metal warehouses that worked out really well. And again, over time, I got out of those. And then is in where I am today, we had some farmland, and we bought more farmland, and it's been great.
All the investors you've dealt with over the years, what do those who get it really right, do extremely well, what do they have in common?
A real discipline of understanding what their parameters are. I had a wise old gentleman that was a successful businessman here in Des Moines, and he literally had a checklist with 10 points on it. And to this day, his son that now runs that partnership, if I bring him a deal, out comes the checklist. And it's literally the same checklist that he's been using for like 35 years. And it's really fundamentals. They like to buy probably nothing under an 8 cap. They might get into a 7.5 cap for decent high quality property. Literally, they'll take a little bit of risk, but they just have their parameters in terms of, I'll tell you, years ago, this gentleman was in his 70s or 80s, and he was up on, he'd bring an old rickety ladder, climb up on the roof, and we'd be holding him by his belt, and he'd be looking over at the side gutters and say, hey, it's just amazing. But they were very disciplined in terms of understanding the fundamentals of the construction of the buildings, they checking what they were getting, but then understanding the fundamentals of the lease, understanding what their liability was, what the tenant's liability was, what the credit in the deal was. So that was really, they were just very disciplined and learned a lot in working with them.
Talk to me about the credit of a deal, because I think that's a subject matter that is not discussed very frequently. And when you come outside of national credit, which is easy to understand for somebody, and you play in the world where most of the office spaces, most of the occupancy is owned by non-credit tenants. How does one understand that? Get their head wrapped around what's the likelihood of this tenant staying to the end of their agreed upon term and paying me?
I actually personally always tell a buyer that if you want to check financials, and in today's information world, you can get, even on a local company, you can get a lot of information. Sure. And it's a small town, so it's not hard to gather information. But, with that, at the same time, there are some other landlords that our company represents, I don't represent them personally, that they ask for a financial statement and 2 years tax returns on everybody they do a lease with. And every once in a while, someone will say, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to share that with you. I'm leaving. And they say, that's fine. We're happy with that. But again, because these people are very disciplined in their approach to how they approach tenants and credit, they seem to do fine, and they get a tenant. And for the most part, they're very stable. Yeah.
Yeah. It's going in deeper.
Yeah. It's going, you gotta, we just did a lease with a regional company out of Chicago. They have 8 offices nationally. And they've been in the industry that they're in for over 50 years. And so the landlord we're doing a deal with said, yeah, I accept this credit. This makes sense, and with very little information, hard financial information, but with what their track history was.
How have interest rates impacted what's your world last, call it 24 to 36 months?
Sure. So interest rates have definitely caused a slowdown, and people are trying to feel their way through. The fundamentals of the deals have changed. And so that's caused, can we get higher rents to justify higher interest rates? We're seeing a lot of people that just have exchanges. They can afford to pay a little bit more than somebody that's just coming in with their own investment money. So the deals are, that way they're tough to be competitive on. I've got a great warehouse for sale right now, and literally I've got a 3-year lease and a 1-year lease. And so nobody's really interested until we can get something better in terms of lease term. But I mean, that's really where we're working with the owners and the tenants right now, trying to make that happen.
If you're a house flipper, execute the burst strategy or do double closings and are in need of money, Little Guy Loans is your go-to lender here in the Des Moines area. Time is money. Loan approvals in 24 hours. Closings in 5 days. Little Guy Loans was founded by Neil Timmins, an investor just like you. Since he has been in over 10,000 homes in Des Moines, there's never an appraisal. Houses, multifamily, and commercial property loans up to $1 million. Check out www.littleguyloans.com.
What are you most excited about the rest of 25 and then into 26?
There's been a lot of delayed transactions, and that the lifespan of a transaction can be 6 months, can be a year, can be 2 years. And literally for the end of 2025, I have some transactions that are probably 2 or 3 years old that are actually going to close, or actually the lease is going to happen. And so I'm looking forward to that. I think we are going to see the Fed the next time around drop interest rates a quarter point, which is a start. And I don't think we're ever going to get down more than a point over 2 years, but people are going to at least get motivated and start doing everything. There's really, the high interest rates have caused malaise. If someone has to do something, they will, or if they're paying cash. Again, it depends on who the client is. But Neil, in every one of these changes, whether it's not really downturn, but the tariffs have certainly caused uncertainty. There are people that are making money in doing things, and there are people that have to do things because they're losing money or change their business plans changing. So, you just have to watch where the market's moving and try to get in that flow.
All right, so talk about where the market's moving. What are you seeing in the office space? Where do you think we're at in the office cycle?
The office cycle is still a little scary to me. Right now, I kind of call it whack-a-mole, in that if you see something pop up, if a tenant pops up and they move, it creates a vacancy where they're leaving. There's a good example of that is American Equities moving downtown, which is great for downtown, celebrated, moving in the Nationwide building. That created a vacancy for that owner. That owner then got lucky and sold that building to a qualified buyer. They're taking that building over, but then that leaves the landlord that tenant was in with the. So there's been 240,000 feet of leasing activity, and we still have 120,000 feet vacant somewhere. That's really the problem, is that there's hard to get a net gain in the market. And the other thing now, with technology being what it is, we're not going to change it, so we have to adapt to it.
Right.
But AI is going to challenge the labor market even more, and people can do more with less. Recently it was announced, again, not deal I had nothing to do with, but that our RSM's moving into the federal courthouse annex downtown. They're moving out of 45 or 50,000 feet, taking 40,000 feet. And they said, that'll serve us for a long time, because technology is changing the way we do business. And that's what we're going to see more and more of tenants saying, we can do more with less. And so, I think it's going to, and then at the same time, that tenant just leaving Capitol Square said some things about the quality of Capitol Square.
Sure.
And so that's a challenge. The people that bought that out of Colorado, pre-COVID, thought they did a pretty smart deal. And I think overall they might have, until COVID hit and the world changed. And so, now it's a hard play.
Yeah, it makes it challenging. And then, depending on what underlying debt you have on there, you got some covenants too.
Right. And so, the office market has some challenges, and we'll see what happens with the Regency complex out west. There's some offers on that, but no deals have been done yet. So it's just going to be interesting. There's rumblings about good things to happen in the Valley West Mall quarter. That's exciting if that happens. So we just have to kind of wait and see and see what kind of market it brings too.
Yeah, it's the only thing certain is uncertainty.
Right. A lot of uncertainty right now. And so the office market, doesn't matter whether it's downtown or in the suburbs. It doesn't matter really whether it's West Des Moines, Clive, Johnson. I mean, it's got its challenges, and the work ahead is, smaller tenants are more prevalent than larger tenants.
What did you learn growing up as a kid that served you well in life?
My dad was a politician in Boston, so I think I've always been somewhat politically savvy, and so I really get along with a lot of different people and learn how to work with people. And so literally growing up in the area of Boston, you're either Irish Catholic, Italian Catholic, or Jewish. Those were the three choices in our neighborhood.
Yeah.
And so it, literally we all just, we grew up, we got along, and we had, literally I still have lifelong friends I'm in touch with that I grew up. But, I think values that, my dad had been in the service. He was in state government for his entire career. And I think that the value of honesty and integrity was something that he passed on to me that, has served me well through my entire career.
For you, Iowa, you could do what you do anywhere. I suspect you don't even have to work if you don't want to work. What keeps you here?
Well, right now, what keeps me here is a seventh grader. Yeah. We have some family roots here now, and so, I do have family roots out east. My wife's an Iowan. She has family here, and literally our daughter's in seventh grade and very active. And then my older son and my daughter both work here in Des Moines. We're lucky they've stayed here. And so, we're just very happy here. We get to travel quite a bit, and I like traveling. But I always, as my kids are growing up, I said, you can travel anywhere, but it's nice to live here and come back here, because cost of living, safety, cleanliness, everything. It's just a great place to live.
Your favorite place to travel to?
Boy, probably Cape Cod. Yeah, we go to Cape Cod every summer for a couple of weeks, and that's literally, I married an Iowa girl. On our first vacation, we went to a lake up in Minnesota, and I love to fish. So like every morning I'd deed up and I'd go out and fish, and come in, clean up, we'd eat, we'd do stuff with the kids that day. And that night after dinner, I'd deed up again, go out and fish a little bit more. And, the mosquitoes up in Minnesota are as big as birds. I just told my wife, I said, why don't we try Cape Cod next year? And I said, then if you want the lake life instead of Cape Cod, that's fine. I'm happy to do whatever you want to do. Well, I couldn't get her to go on a lake vacation now for the world. And she's the one that fell in love with Cape Cod. So that's a very important trip for 2 weeks every year. We were at the same house, we go to the same beach, same area. And, we have friends out there too, and family. So we host a giant family reunion, and my family out there laughs because they said, Kevin, the only time we all get together is when you get here. So, so it's great.
That's great. Yeah. You ready for the final 3 questions?
Sure.
If you had one piece of advice for your 20-year-old self, what would it be?
Buy more real estate. Yeah, it really would be. probably own it longer and hold it. Yeah.
Yeah. Buy more and hold it
Yeah.
longer.
Mhm.
2 books that changed your life.
2 books that changed my life. Probably the best book for that was probably Good to Great. One of my favorite books back in 2000 when that came out, I think it was. I quoted it often and many times and literally had it in my sales meetings and would quote getting people in the right seats, doing strategy and sticking with a plan. And that served me well long term. Probably my favorite book, business book. And then there was another book called Execute that, again, same thing. It's just like, don't hesitate. I think, Neil, we've all seen people that in our careers that plan and plan and plan and never pull a trigger. So, Execute kind of said, ready, fire, aim. But there's a little bit of wisdom to that in that, if you prepare too long, you miss the target. But
executing on a poor plan is better than not executing on the best plan in the world.
That's right.
You're going to adjust that poor plan as you go.
That's right.
You're going to get feedback.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
So those are probably my 2 favorite business books.
If you were cast away on an island for a year, you could only get 3 pieces of data about your business each and every month. What 3 things must you know every month to know how your business is running?
Are you talking about my personal business or just real estate in general?
I'll let you answer it any which way you want.
That's a great question. I'd probably want, probably want the business record just to kind of see what's going on in Des Moines. And, I've always told people working with me that anything you read in the business record hopefully will not surprise you, that you should know it before you read it in the business record. That would be one thing I'd like to see. And then, I get actually emails from Yardi that are great in national intelligence. And then I was also involved in SIOR, which I was national president of in 2005, and they have a great publication. And so I actually enjoyed that quarterly, publication that actually now is like everything else, just electronic, which is great. Yeah. We do everything on our phones or devices.
Kevin, this has been a great conversation. What's one question I did not ask that I should have asked?
Oh gosh, it's funny getting ready to just coming here and thinking about what we might talk about. Just talking about the history of deals over the years. So, when I worked for Kenny Granquist, I wound up doing the assembly for Prairie Meadows where it is.
Oh yeah.
But we had 600 acres under option in Bondurant. We had 1,100 acres in option in Ankeny, where actually Baker Group in that area is. There's just been a lot of fun deals. So, I was just thinking about some of the assemblies I've done, some of the deals I've done. And, we're talking about Westtown Parkway. I literally have either sold land or sold buildings at, a lot of the locations on that area. So it's fun.
What's the one transaction that sticks out in your mind that you're most?
Well, there's a lot of those, there's been so many of them, but I mean, we sold AMC, the Hub Tower. That was a very complicated deal out of foreclosure. There's just so many of them, that just different ones just stick out, just a lot of different fun ones. We represented Merchants Bonding when they moved to Westtown Parkway, and they're just going through a massive expansion again. Right. That company's just blowing up with growth. I mean, great leadership, great company, and so it's fun to see companies you've done work for continue to have success.
No doubt.
Yeah.
Kevin, this has been a great conversation.
Great.
I appreciate you taking the time. For people that want to find you, follow you, connect with you, where can they go? What should they do?
They could go to irarealtycommercial.com, and my email is kcrowley@irarealtycommercial.com, and I'm easily available.
Yeah. We'll put the links below in the show notes.
Great.
Everybody.
Super.
Kevin, I appreciate your time.
Neil, great. Thanks. Good to see you.
Thanks. Pro.
Thanks for listening. If you're enjoying the show, may I ask a favor of you? Naturally, subscribe so you never miss an episode. But would you rate and leave an honest written review on Apple Podcasts? It does a lot for us here at the show, and I appreciate reading your thoughts. Great guests make for a great show. If you know of another Iowan who would be a great guest, or you yourself have interest in being a guest, well, get on our radar. Visit Investing in Iowa to fill out an application or recommend a guest. And if you want to connect with me one-on-one, go to LegacyImpactInvestors.com. Click on the Invest With Us button in the top right corner, and there you can pick a time for the two of us to get on the calendar and connect. Until next time, keep investing in Iowa.